Welcome back to another episode of Off the Carousel here on the Field of 68. I'm thrilled to be joined now by new South Dakota State head coach Bryan Petersen. Coach, what's going on, man? It's good to see you. How you doing?
Good to see you too. Doing great. Just enjoying a little 4th of July week back in Iowa, where I'm from, and excited to talk some Jackrabbit hoops.
All right, before we get into that, dude, we are recording this a couple days before July 4th, so I got to know when you are at the cookout on July 4th, what's the go-to plate for you? What are we looking at? Are we looking at burgers? Are we looking at dogs? Are we looking at barbecue? What are we talking about here?
Right, a mixture of burgers and hot dogs, and my mom's specialty those big like Vegas, like the big hot dogs or whatever. So Vegas hot dogs is kind of the go-to around here. So
Vegas hot dogs, that's the go. Okay, so we're gonna have to get you to come over to the Doster house at some point because I'm telling you, man, I make the best ribs in the state of New Jersey, and I will stake
okay.
my reputation on that. I'll stake the field of 68 on it. Best ribs in New Jersey come out of my green egg in my backyard. So we
Oh,
gotta
that's
we
big.
gotta get you up on that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, so you are taking over your first Division I head coaching job. You have some head coaching experience in the past in the JUCO ranks. We'll get into that here in a second. But 38 years old, taking over your own Division I program. If I would have told you this 15 years ago when you got into the coaching business, would you would think it would happen this quick?
No, because honestly, 15 years ago, I don't know if I even had the aspirations to be a Division I head coach. I just wanted to coach college hoops and keep being part of a team and keep being part of a great team, being around the game because I just love and have a passion for it. And obviously as my career's evolved, I always thought maybe, hopefully have a chance to be a Division I head coach. But yeah, 15 years ago when I got this thing started, I definitely wasn't thinking, this would be, happening for me, but definitely obviously very fortunate. I've had a lot of really, good people in my career, that really helped me out and obviously helped me get to this point.
Take me through the kind of the week that this all happened, right? Because if I remember correctly, Hendo was officially announced as the Drake head coach in, I want to say the March 28th, something like that. And maybe a day or two later, South Dakota State announced that you were being promoted to the head coach role there. Did you know that this was going to be kind of how it played out? Were you aware of what was happening with Hendo and Drake and everything? And kind of, what are your take me back to that moment in time and what it's like trying to figure out, like, am I going to go with him? Am I going to get this job? What's going to happen here?
Yeah, it was a whirlwind of a couple weeks, honestly. Like, we've been pretty fortunate here at South Dakota State to have some pretty good seasons, and Hendo's obviously a really, really good coach. And the last couple off seasons, there always been a few rumors, about what's happening with him, and but this one was pretty real. Obviously with Drake too, in particular, Hendo's home state and great program. So when the rumors were starting to swirl a little bit, and he was obviously in conversations with those guys, you kind of got to get things ready to roll. And because, I didn't know for sure what was going to happen. I was hopeful that I'd have to get this opportunity to be the head coach at South Dakota State, but it definitely was a very eventful week. But it was a very special week for me and my family. And when obviously Hendo got the opportunity to take the Drake job and he accepted it, had to get ready to roll right away because literally that next day I was meeting with President Barry Dunn and Justin Seller, athletic director, and had the opportunity to sit down and talk to them about, the opportunity and, was lucky enough to get the opportunity and then obviously be chosen as the next head coach of South Dakota State.
What was your sales pitch to them? Hey, look, man, last time you promoted from within, this guy won 4 of the next 5 league titles. I'm your man right here. We'll do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no guarantees like that, but no, I think obviously I've been up here for 6 years, so they've seen what I've done for the program and with Hendo alongside our other assistant coaches as well too. So I feel like I've been interviewing for the last 6 years since I've been here. So when I had that sit down for them, it was more so just like, some leadership strategies, some things that maybe would be a little different, but there's going to be a lot of the same too, with what Hendo did and our staff did. But it definitely was a surreal moment, a little nerve wracking to sit in that and obviously go through that interview process. But the biggest sales pitch was like, I'm just going to continue to be who I am, at the end of the day. And what you observed as an assistant coach, I'm just going to slide over and take on the new role as the head coach. And, and I think I was able to kind of also talk to them about my former head coaching experience, being at a different level, but I have done it before and
Yeah, that
kind of some of the
helps.
things I did when I was.
So, what I think is really interesting about kind of you heading up to South Dakota State is you came from outside the Summit League bubble. For the people that don't know, I think it was your entire college basketball existence was either at Kirkwood Community College or Iowa State, right? And then you kind of end
Yep.
up getting this job with Hendo. You were together at Iowa State previously, but You get this job as an assistant coach with Hendo, heading up to South Dakota, and I'm just I'm curious what you think. Why why has that program been able to find the sustained level of success that they've had? It's been across three different head coaches. It's been through a transition from Division II to Division I, and they're still just right there, winning championships, making it to the tournament, producing players that are good enough, like Baylor Shireman, to get drafted. Why is it rolling like this in Brookings?
Well, there's just a tremendous foundation of people. And I know that's a cliche that it gets used a lot, like, in sports. It's like it's about the people, but it really is at South Dakota State. The region up there, Brookings community, like it's special. I mean, basketball, all the sports, all athletics really, really matter to the people in the region of Brookings, for South Dakota State. And, so it starts there and then just great leadership. President Barry Dunn, our current president, Justin Seller, AD, like they've been really good at their jobs and obviously can continue to sustain the success that our athletic department's had. The culture up there is phenomenal. And like you said, like, Coach Nagy, helped, he was a really good D2 coach when they were D2. And then he obviously helped the transition and really got the ball rolling in the Division I era. And then TJ got there and did his thing and kept it going. And then Hendo obviously added on top of that. So it's definitely the foundation of support, with the people, I think is what really stands out. And I think that's what's allowed South Dakota State to be very successful over a long period of time. And I think anytime you're at a place that's really supported both, not only financially, but just people to show up, and people want to see a winner. People want to be a part of a winner. And that's what we've been able to have at South Dakota State. And I think that's what's really helped it, maintain that culture and, people want to be a part of.
I remember talking with Ryan Miller about this once. I was doing a story on, I don't even remember what it was, something about had to do with like South Dakota high school basketball. But what he was saying is that it feels it feels like the little brother of Indiana in the sense that in every one of these communities, basketball is kind of what brings everybody together as much as anything else. Where they just it's all of the towns love the high school basketball teams, and you'll put 2 or 3 thousand people in a building where you got like 8,000 people in the town for the high school basketball games, and it feels like that has kind of filtered up to the college ranks. And I don't know if you're allowed to say nice things about South Dakota, but they got good crowds there too. North Dakota State, I don't know if you're allowed to say nice things about them. They got good crowds there too. The Summit League tournament gets good turnout. It feels like that area of the country loves hoops, and I don't know how many people kind of realize that.
No, you're right. I mean, it's a little colder up here, so we want to stay inside a little bit more. So I think that also plays a role in that, obviously during the winter time. But yeah, it's a basketball driven area. I mean, it's because there's been really good basketball. There's been great coaches. I mean, obviously with the Division I schools, but even the D2 schools like the Northern State and some of the the Northern Sun Conference, that stretches over to the Dakotas in this area, like is really good basketball, really good coaches and players. So people want to come out and watch that, and I think, we don't have any pro teams that's very close to us either. I think that's a huge factor is like, when kids grow up around in this area, in this region, like they grow up watching the Jacks. Like that's who they grow up watching. They might be a Timberwolves fan, but that's a little further away. It's not easy just to hop in the car and go to a T-Wolves game or just go to another pro game or a pro team. So they grow up and, South Dakota State, mainly, but obviously some other Dakota schools, like we're also the pro team for our region. And so I think that helps a lot with the support and the people coming to the games.
Yeah, I think they're gonna love you that you just say those other Dakota schools and not even bother to mention them. That's is that what I'm gonna have to start going with now? Just those other Dakota schools.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Um, you played JUCO right before you went to Iowa State, and you also coached in the JUCO ranks. And I'll hype you up here. I believe you won 2 national titles, and you were the NJCAA national coach, or was it the other way around? 2 coach of the year, 1 national. It was something. You won a lot of games, and you got recognized for it quite a bit. Other JUCO guys I've talked to said that level prepared them for what college basketball is in the year 2025 with the amount of transfers and with the amount of movement and how important it is to be able to kind of build teams on the fly, right? And develop chemistry on the fly. Do you see that at all? And has that kind of helped your transition from the JUCO ranks to South Dakota State?
I do agree with that. I think that's a real thing. You still got to go out and execute. You got to get the job done. But I do think that experience has helped me because, when I was at Kirkwood for 7 years as a coach, I mean, every spring, I wouldn't say we had to go out and get a whole new team, but we got to get at least a half a team. And that number is 7 or 8 guys. And so, hopefully we don't have to go out and get 7 or 8 players every year at South Dakota State in the spring. But I do think like that's something that I have experience in doing. A lot of JUCO coaches have to do that every year. And then, like you said, like not only is it putting the pieces together and the roster together, but then you got to figure out how to get them to play together. And then in JUCO, we didn't have summer sessions. We didn't have these summer workouts. I mean, kids were showing up August and we're getting right to it. And then you got to play a game in November. So like you had to figure out real quick, like number one, what you had on your roster. But then you also had to figure out how these pieces are going to fit together. How are we going to get connected? And we only got 2 months to figure it out before we got to tip it up for real. So, I think, as a former JUCO coach, like, that's kind of what you had to go through every single year. So now, in 2025 of Division I college basketball on the men's side, like, hopefully we don't have to go get a whole new team every year, but like it is something that I think junior college prepares you for what college basketball is at our level now.
Yeah, I still think that finding a way to be able to retain and keep that continuity is just incredibly important. Um, in college hoops and in sports in general, just knowing your teammates, knowing the area, knowing the best restaurants to go to, knowing what the coaching staff's kind of terminology is for whatever sport it is. And I thought that you guys did a fantastic job of being able to keep some guys around. Obviously, like Oscar's going to Purdue. He's not going to say no to the guy that coached Zach Edey in Big Ten money, right? Like that's kind of just the era that we're in. Owen went with Hendo to Drake, but you got 5 rotation guys back. You got 3 starters back. You got your starting backcourt back, and you got a group in the backcourt that I think is as good as just about any at the mid-major level that you're going to find. And I'm just kind of curious, like, was that because of the relationships that you've had being there before for the last 6 years? Is that a product of you got some South Dakota kids that are like, well, I'm at my dream school right now. I don't need to go anywhere else to live my college experience. How are you guys able to kind of keep that retention and keep those guys when you see a coaching change like this?
Well, I think it was a mixture of everything you just said right there. I think, we got some South Dakota kids that grew up that South Dakota State was their dream school. But I also think, yeah, I mean, we've worked really hard with our relationships here, myself and the rest of our, staff that, it's a little newer now, but just in general, like that's something we really pride ourselves on is having great relationships with our players and the development. And then I think they just understand that South Dakota State is a special place, that they could have left. They definitely could have, but they know this place is special. They got an opportunity to get better here, grow as people, as players, and then compete for a championship. And I think, when you combine all those things, like I think it really made it, easier for them to say, you know what, I'm gonna stay here, because this is the right place for me. This is where I'm comfortable at. This is where I can grow. This is where I can be the best version of myself. And so I think it's a little bit of everything. Relationships, I think recruiting local kids, I think is a big part of that and having those kids on your roster. But I tell people all the time, like, I think a lot of our guys that have been in our program now for a few years, I think really realize like how special South Dakota State is with our arena, an $80 million new arena that we just went
Mhm.
into, our fan base, like they know, like they travel around, we play other mid majors or other schools, even high majors. They see like how good we have it here, and so they knew, that also played a pretty big role in why they wanted to stay here as well.
So you got Saylor back, you got Gary back, you got Jackson back. You added a kid from Winona State who I've heard is really really good. How are you going to find minutes for all these guys? We're playing a 6'3" power forward. Is that what we're doing here?
We'll fight. We'll figure it out. That's why we got to compete every day. Obviously, the summertime, we're 5 weeks into our summer workouts. We'll have 3 more weeks after the 4th of July, and we'll figure it out. I mean, obviously, it's a big part of this is a lot of evaluation, but it's really about growing together, getting connected this summer. But myself, our staff, we're definitely evaluating, trying to figure out what's going to be best for our team to go win as many games as we can and grow. And we'll have some tough decisions, but that's what you want it to be. You want it to be, you want to be putting some tough decisions as a coach because that means you got some good options.
In all seriousness, though, I think one of my favorite things about the Summit League is that it's one of the only conferences left where it's like we're going to try to win this game 95-90, right? And it's not to say that you guys don't prioritize defense, but it feels like all right, we're going to go out there and get buckets. We're going to have some fun. We're going to get up and down the floor. We're going to chuck up a bunch of threes. But we're going to put on a show for you. That I think that's my favorite thing about the league is that you still have a little bit of that. Like there's fireworks, man. You never know what's going to happen. Anyone can beat anyone 195 on a given night.
Yeah, no, it's a very skilled league. I mean, it's been that way for a while, even before I got up here. Like it just always seems like it's a skilled league, high IQ, good passing league, good shooting league. I don't know the exact stats, but I think shooting wise, it's one of the best leagues in the country over the last decade. And so you kind of got to play the game a little bit now. I definitely want to play a little defense. I kind of kind of that's a big part of like who I am, was as a player and kind of as a coach growing up in my career so far. Like I do emphasize it, it'll be something that we'll work on, and obviously a big part of what we do. But you're right, the summer league is a fun league. I mean, there's a lot of really good coaches, a lot of skilled players, a lot of guys that put the ball in the basket. So you kind of got to hang with them. So you got to find ways to score the rock. And we're very fortunate. We got some really good scores on our roster. But I do think at the end of the day, though, usually one of the better teams, if not the best defensive team, wins that conference tournament because the 3 games down in the Denny Sanford Center, you're not going to hit on all cylinders and score 90 all 3 games. You got to figure out how to get some stops and key moments. And so, but you're definitely right. It's a fun league to follow, overall, because there's a lot of really good scorers and shooters in this league.
If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for the season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. I think I mentioned this to Hendo the other day. I think what you guys over the last 6 years did just about as good as anyone in the mid-major ranks was identify talent, but more importantly, develop that talent and get them to the point where, a guy like Baylor Shireman can head to Creighton and end up being an NBA draft pick, or a guy like Zeke Mayo can get to Kansas, or William Kyle can get to UCLA, or, Oscar can get to Purdue. And I think that there's a marketplace for programs like yours that bring in these high school talents, that develop them over the course of 2 to 3 years, and then get them off to the high major ranks and let them have a year or two up there. And it's the same way that you see programs kind of highlight, hey, look, you know what? You come here, you give us 2 years, and you're going to be off to the NBA. I don't know if that's something that you guys have thought about. Is that something that you kind of use in your recruiting pitches? And how do you kind of navigate this world where I mean, we can be frank about it, man. It's at a certain point, like the money is the money, and it's very hard to tell somebody to say no to what can be a life-changing dollar figure.
Yeah, I mean, player development is probably my biggest passion as a coach. I mean, that's why I got into coaching, after I got done playing. And, my first job kind of working with Coach McDermott and with Coach Herberg, I was kind of like involved in a lot of the extra workouts and player development. So that's my passion. And so and it still is. Like, I love being on the floor. I love to, get guys better and help them, reach their potential. And, our whole staff, here at South Dakota State has been really good at it, over the last few years, because you name dropped a lot of guys that have gotten better,
Mm-hmm.
during their time frame here. And so we do use that in recruiting. But, it's obviously something that we're not like selling out to, because I want to coach kids for 4 years. I want to coach them their whole career. But at the same time, we'll share the facts. We've had some guys come here and get a heck of a lot better here with our resources, our coaching staff, and, the way we play, I think, is also a big part of that as well. And, if the opportunity comes that it's a really good situation, I understand. I used to, when it first started happening, you kind of, it was hard to kind of figure out how to feel about it, but now kind of almost take some pride in it, as a program, knowing that I think we're doing some good things here. I think we've got a good recipe here to get our player, which is most important to me. And then obviously, hopefully win some championships along the way with them. But, it's part of our recruiting pitch, I guess, a little bit now, just because it's happened a lot in the last few years. But at the same time, we still want to coach kids as long as we can here. But, we are proud of, the kids that we've had and how they've developed.
You mentioned Greg McDermott at Iowa State, and I do want to ask you a little bit about him because I think he's one of my favorite coaches in college basketball because of how adaptable he's been. I think that he is one of these guys that excels at being able to figure out what his team does at an elite level and lean into that. Like I think about his Northern Iowa teams and what they were like and what they played like. And then I think about the teams that he had with Dougie McBuckets and Grant Gibbs and Ethan Rogge and how they played nothing like those teams. And then you see the team he had the last couple of years with Kalkbrenner, where it's like, all right, we're just going to funnel everybody into the lane. We're not going to foul you. We're not going to force turnovers. And we're going to go from being this elite offense to all of a sudden, like they're kind of just a stingy defense and they're trying to, make all these actions on to get guys open threes. I love the way that he plays. I love the way that he coaches, and I love it because he's not really married to one kind of ideal style. Was that something that you saw when you spent time with him, and how has that kind of impacted the way that you coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Mack is one of the smartest guys I've ever been around. I was lucky enough to play for him for 2 years and then coached with him for a year before he moved on to Creighton, and then I stayed at Iowa State. So I think he's one of the sharpest basketball minds. I mean, on both sides of the basketball. But I do think like his time at Iowa State, and unfortunately, I was part of some of the tougher years. When we were at Iowa State together, where I think he really. That's probably where his transition of like adapting really started. I don't want to speak for him, but I know, like you said it, I think when he was at North Dakota State, when he was at Northern Iowa, he kind of had a recipe for success and how they were playing and how things, how the recruiting went and all that stuff. And then he comes to Iowa State and we tried to do some of those same things, and I don't think it worked out quite as good. And then I think when he got to Creighton, I think he really just kept evolving, like you said, like just recruiting, the way they played offensively. I mean, it's pretty crazy. Like the way we were playing at Iowa State versus how he was playing at Creighton was quite a bit different, But I think it speaks to him as evolving as a coach and continuing to grow and just adapt. Like it's been very impressive, and now he's so consistent now. And like you said, like his teams have been a little bit different, in the last couple of years, at Creighton, and his ability just to kind of change with the times of basketball too. Like you watch their team play and you watch an NBA game later on that night. There's a lot of similarities, and I think he just kind of keeps evolving with the game, and he's extremely sharp as a basketball mind, and he's been able to really, string together a heck of a run at Creighton. Since he's been there.
Last one I got for you, and then I'll let you get back to your family, get back to celebrating the July 4th holiday. With Hendo gone and with
Yep.
Clink gone, like has the sanity level come back to a normal point on the South Dakota State coaching staff? Like, are we going to be able to actually have normal conversations with you guys now?
Oh yeah, I don't know about that. It's still entertaining, but definitely I miss those guys. They were a blast to work with every single day the last 6 seasons, and I learned a lot from them, and we had a lot of fun. Obviously it's been a unique transition with obviously with Clink, not being around, and obviously without Hendo and around. And I love working with those guys. Learned a lot from them, and we'll still hang out quite a bit when we're on the road and we see each other. But it's definitely it's not maybe quite as entertaining on a day to day basis in our offices without those guys around. But we're definitely still having some fun up here.
I always thought Clink was kind of built like a Lego person. You know those little Lego figures with the circle. I always thought that he had the same kind of body type as the Lego.
You'd probably say more like outside linebacker or something. He played quarterback in college. I mean, he was that's what he's built for, is that outside linebacker quarterback. And
No, that must have been back in the day because he's more built like a fullback at this point.
uh,
That's my guy,
that's
man. I got
fun.
to get a couple shots in on him. Listen, Bryan, I appreciate the time, man. Congratulations.